Hi, SEO folks, and welcome to OnCrawl's SEO in Orbit webinar series, the first ever series sending SEO into space. SEO in Orbit is a series of webinars running from April 17th through June 24th, taking you on a trip through the galaxy of technical SEO. So what I highly recommend you is to first watch the webinar, and after each webinar, please join us on Twitter to vote for your top tip. The top tip you get by our incredible guests. We'll send all of the top tips and the best tweets with technical SEO advice. We'll be sending to space for real on June 27th. We'll keep you posted on that. Please participate on Twitter using the hashtag OnCrawlInOrbit or head to oncrawl.com/SEO in Orbit for more information. Today's SEO in Orbit is how is technical SEO shifting to the new standard? So I'm François Goube, and I'll be your host for this episode. I'm the co-founder of technical SEO data platform OnCrawl, and I'm the typical SEO nerd. So I'm very, very honored to have a very special guest today for how is technical SEO shifting to the new standard with Detlef Johnson. Hi, Detlef.
Hi, François. The honor is all mine.
Yeah, we really appreciate you because SEO folks, we have here Detlef Johnson, who's editor-at-large for Media, a columnist for Search Engine Land. He has a column called SEO for Developers. And Detlef has been one of the original group of pioneering webmasters who established the professional SEO field for more than 20 years ago. So summing up 20 years won't be fair. So I'll let you, Detlef, tell a little bit more about you.
Sure. In those old days, we didn't have as much of these fancy frameworks that people are using today. We did have JavaScript, but it doesn't look anything like the JavaScript we're using today. We did not have CSS. So in those old days, we had to do design using the HTML element tables for our layout. And, in those days, the search engines weren't like they look like today either. Google was a new search engine, and at the day, Alta Vista was king. So those days have changed dramatically. So the new standard is a much different affair with these new frameworks that we're seeing all the time now, designing the modern web.
Yeah. So thanks again for joining us, Detlef. So we'll start with a few definitions. First one is what is technical SEO from your point of view right now, and how it's related with search engine in 2019.
So technical SEO is just like in the old days, an assurance from the technical point of view that your published content is sampleable, indexable by the search engines that operate. In those old days, it was Alta Vista, I mentioned that, but today largely we're talking about Google and Bing and DuckDuckGo. So these search engines have to use user agents that are sort of like, you can think of them as robot users that need to be able to go to your website to pick up your content so they can store it on their own sites and deliver it in response to user queries, what people search Google for. And so technical SEO is the assurance from a technical perspective that your content won't pose problems for the search engines like Google, Bing, and DuckDuckGo, because they aren't perfect, and even Google, as impressive as it is, uses an older version of Chrome browser to index the web, and some of the newer JavaScript is not working in the new in the older Chrome. And so therefore, if you're using the bleeding edge JavaScript frameworks, there is some chance that some of your content will go without indexing. And so technical SEO has to, in the future, has to start looking at those kinds of issues and solve them for businesses out there struggling with this issue.
Okay, thanks. And you know, Detlef, as SEOs, we used to focus a lot on keyword placement back in the days in page content. And as search engine technology improves, however, we hear more and more about technical SEO right now. And so my question for you is, what interests you most about technical SEO right now? I know you find it very exciting at the moment, so can you tell us your thoughts about that?
Sure. The things that I find still in opportunity for, especially in this modern world of these impressive frameworks, is to remember the standard, the web standards, and stick to them. And so there are the thing that's exciting to me are looking at things like the Semantic HTML5 containers, where you get to describe your content. You basically use the markup to provide the search engine and other user agents. It's not only for search engines. You get to describe your content using full containers. So I like to bring things down to that level. That kind of excites me because it's something that's fundamental to the web. It's an incredibly important, and sometimes the modern frameworks overlook these things. Sometimes the people who design and develop websites overlook the simple matters that are semantic HTML5. And then SEOs typically bring in, say, oh, you should be taking advantage of schema markup. There's another area that is of interest because a lot of people overlook that when they're designing these modern websites. They forget that there's these facilities, again, a standard, but one that Google pays attention to, and they can enhance your search listings. And so there's more things I'm a little interested in, and a little reserved at the same time with things like the AMP standard and so on for search engine indexing in the future. But the big thing is that there's this whole new thing of late, the last year or two, where we've been able to use the cache server edge SEO, which is entirely new, and that's something that's we never would have dreamed up the possibility of that in the 20 years ago SEO. But today, now we can actually use SEO. We can actually perform the job of SEO on the edge of the cloud, basically on a caching server. And a number of companies are providing APIs into this. This would be Cloudflare primarily is out front, but you also have CloudFront with AWS. Amazon is doing this too. And Fastly is trying to get in the game. So you have these cache server services, and you can do edge SEO there. And what that means is that if you're a company and you're struggling with a technical SEO issue, if you've got a technical SEO who's adept at using these cache server SEO practices, they can probably solve some things for you if you go with that cache service. So it can be sort of a band-aid, quick fix, and particularly with Amazon, their cache server is going to have an instance of Node itself on there. So imagine having the entire Node framework at your disposal in the request response cycle. I mean, the possibility is unlimited there, because you can actually provide a stable environment where you might be able to help websites and companies migrate from one platform to another by basically tooling it all up on the cloud. So those are the kinds of things that interest me greatly, and it's burgeoning and brand new, and so those are fun things.
Just to follow up a little bit on that, do you think that the SEOs are drifting from marketing to the IT teams? Does that imply that kind of switch?
I love that question, because we began thinking SEO as an industry was webmasters. There were no marketers in the original SEO group. of us back in the 1990s, late 90s, and early aughts. It was all technical SEO. There was no marketing SEO. But the go-to search engine with penny clicks, suddenly marketers were interested because they could buy results. And then Google AdWords, which turned them into a behemoth marketing or a behemoth ad agency, basically. The marketers are now intricately involved in the SEO practice, and tech SEO might have waned a little bit, but I think this is a resurgence in a big way with all of these new modern framework technical issues and problems. I think hearkening in the technical SEO renaissance, in a sense, with the JavaScript renaissance, and I think that we have SEOs who don't know the development stuff are probably going to stay in the marketing department, because there's still work there to be done, because you still have to translate what the technical folks are doing. But I think the technical SEO field is one where we should all become full-fledged developers so that we can really speak to the issues and not just talk with the developers, but provide snippets of code and actually get our hands dirty and fix things literally on the client side. And so that's where I would like to bridge the gap, and that's primarily been my focus with the column of SEO for developers. I'm encouraging developers to participate. I'm encouraging marketers who know have some development skills to ask questions and participate as well. And that's something that I see as very important for the future.
Okay, thanks. There is technical aspects of a modern website that can make it hard for search engines to rank the page. What are the main technical SEO aspects of the page that need to be resolved for SEO to work? What are the main things you will highly recommend to focus on at first?
You'll hear the word rendering a lot. If you're a marketer, you might not necessarily know, but you might have some picture or an idea of what rendering means. The first, you would want to understand that there are maybe some content that doesn't render right away, or has a delayed rendering, or renders in a constant update cycle. What that means is, if you're loading up a page and you see something on the page that's changing in real time, and I like to use the analogy sports scores. So if you're loading up a page, and you see a game on the screen, and you see things changing in real time, there's a variety of ways in which you can update that from the developer standpoint, and most of it is going to involve JavaScript. Modern frameworks have taken that concept and applied it to a whole user interface, and that's what these frameworks you might hear about called React, Angular, Vue. They are the main three. There's also Ember, but they're the main three that provide developers with the ability to design a whole user interface where everything from the start can be updated in real time, reflecting the state of the database. So if the database changes because the sports score changes, it can come to you down the pipe in real time, change on your screen without having to reload the screen. And so that kind of stuff poses problems for search engines, because whenever they're going to come to your site to try to index your content, they're only going to get that one snapshot in time. And so if they're going to get that one snapshot, what is that data? Is it old? Is it new? So another issue is that the JavaScript frameworks don't always tell the search engine how to unpack all of this and render it at that point of conception, and they instead have the client, once it's fully loaded, rendering everything, and Google just doesn't operate that way. They have a separate process for rendering later, but they'll index your content, and then if they deem your site worthy of rendering, they'll send it into a rendering queue, because it's very resource intensive and costs them a lot of money to render that. So when you have this content that's delayed, the recommendation from a technical SEO standpoint, and Google themselves will tell you, try to do pre-rendering. So if you've got pre-rendering or hybrid rendering, these are solutions, but my favorite is, of course, pre-rendering entirely, SSR, server-side rendering. And the reason is that we're talking about optimizing for search engines, Well, if you're only half optimizing for search engines, then you might want to look at hybrid rendering or client-side rendering. But if you're optimizing, you're trying to really do things correctly to the maximum. The only way to do that is to server-side render. And this then begs the question, if your website doesn't change, if it's not sports scores, why are you even using React in the first place? So you have these really fundamental questions that this problem brings up. I love that discussion, and I think we should have that discussion, because I think that many sites are over-engineered because React is the new toy everybody wants to play with. And you have all these developers that want to go, oh, I know React, because they figure it's going to be great for their career. In effect, though, they sell React then to companies and organizations, and then they get these indexing problems with Google, and the business suffers. So getting SEOs involved in all of these decisions, especially knowledgeable ones, early in the process, so you can help decide these things, whether React is right or whether you want to just go completely differently, where you're rendering your content in real time for everybody. But if you are using React, the pre-rendering on the server side is definitely the way to go. The search engine then won't tell the difference. There is no rendering on the client side. They'll never have to put it into that queue so that they can render it. All of the, generally, if it's done like that, generally you're not using the ES6, next to ES7 JavaScript that they can't even read. So pre-rendering entirely to HTML string, which is there's a method to HTML string in the React ecosystem. So that doing all of that, and in some cases you might still have an important site that's in React that's going to do some client-side rendering. Well, you can still do detecting of the user agent string, and if it's Googlebot, send them pre-render. If it's not, send them client-side rendering. So you still have lots of options here. It all just needs to be in the discussion, and that's the technical SEO around modern website frameworks.
And what do you think about page speed? Because it's been a trending topic over the last couple of years.
Yeah, and speed is near and dear to my heart. I love it. I think it's definitely part of the experience. Google has done this whole AMP standard in order to try to force speed on the web, and they have these statistics like, look, we sped up 15% of the web or something, and I think that they recognize the importance of speed. They're going to give us credits, a little bit of ranking credits. It's not the silver bullet. If you just have a fast website, you still have to have content. You still have to have popular content that people link to and so on. But overall, you don't want speed to be the one area where you fall behind, because it's something that a lot of the fixes are good for your users anyway, and a lot of the fixes are relatively simple. And you don't have to have a perfect score on Lighthouse, for example, which is a great service by Chrome to the Chrome developer tools. Lighthouse offers you all these metrics. But speed is incredibly important for user experience, and I think that while it's not going to just be the great silver bullet for rankings, it should definitely be done. The compressed images, the trying to combine resources so you don't have so many web requests to 3 different scripts. You can combine them into one. So you're bundling things. All of these are really good practices for building a website. So I think they're terrific.
Yeah, I believe that Google has educated a lot of webmasters regarding best practices around payloads. And moving forward to another big topic in the SEO industry, search technologies include more and more machine learning, from RankBrain to entity-first indexing, whatever. What, in your opinion, Detlef, is the biggest effect of machine learning on technical SEO?
Well, machine learning clearly is something that's useful to Google for serving excellent search results. They're going to be using it, this RankBrain and so on, they're going to be using it in order for them to be able to predict what would be good search results for a query they've never seen before. So if a query comes along and they've just never seen it, they don't know what, to present as results. Their own machine learning engineering may surface some things that are of interest to the search user. From the publisher side, machine learning probably has less usefulness in that area, but it can still be explored. I think in the SEO field, people are imagining fight fire with fire. If Google is doing machine learning, we should do machine learning in response. And I'm not in favor of that, actually, because I think that if you really invest a lot of resources into developing a machine learning application, I'm not so sure it's going to pay off, with so much better. But it can in certain circumstances. So I want to reserve that, because there are some larger companies where machine learning can make a huge difference in rankings. I think of sites like Amazon.com, and they want to rank in Google just as well. And they would be using machine learning maybe to change a few things about what they present. Machine learning would be especially something that would have to do with changing your content in response to conditions. And do you really want to give your content over to the algorithm? Well, you have to be pretty confident in that algorithm, right? So that's the kind of thing you're getting into. And then what about these hazards? I think Notre Dame was burning the other day, and underneath the YouTube, Google's YouTube machine learning had posted a banner at the bottom there that had the 9/11 fact-checking 9/11 tower terrorist thing, which automatically kind of associated the thing with a terrorist activity, and it might not. It was an accident, yes. So
it was totally a false positive.
Yeah, that's a false positive. These things are going to happen, so that's where you want to be careful with those things.
But regarding the really the SEO side, SEOs have started training models to predict search ranking and behavior. What do you think of this approach? Is this something just trending, and it's not the way we should do that, or is there some space to explore here?
I think there's some space to explore, but I think like blockchain, right? With blockchain, there's space to explore. You have Bitcoin, which is a success for all measures, but then you have all these other coins and all these other uses of blockchain, and so it's kind of a trending or trendy kind of technology, acronym that people like to use to sort of puff up, or in their puffery for marketing materials. I'm not so sure that there's nothing there. I'm not saying that, because there is, but I just don't see until it's matured, how much I would recommend people invest in it, because like Bitcoin, you never really know. It could be just money lost,
Okay, thank you for that comment. Following up on another topic, regarding web design, what is something that you would really like to see implemented by search engines in the future of search?
Wow. Okay. So how they should design. The search user interface.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we see more and more comprehensive search engine result pages. So what you would like to see implemented by Google and others?
Well, you have this interesting. This is a great question for this time frame, because we're in a sort of a switchover. In the old days, Google was just the search bar and two buttons, search and I'm feeling lucky, and their logo above it, nothing else. There was nothing else. And it was 10 blue links, and this is before they even had maps, but then maps, So they slowly started adding these things as they bought properties, like they bought they bought a Keyhole, I think, is with the map application they bought it anyway. And so they began adding these things to bulk out their search results. It began looking more and more like Yahoo, right? In the old days, we used to tease Yahoo for being a portal and looking too busy. And now Google is doing this. But the thing is that it might be actually relevant today because we have mobile. And the screen real estate space on mobile is so much more precious because we have far fewer pixels to deal with. And so the stripped down approach is incredibly important still. And while they have these knowledge panels and they have the carousels for different, product indexes and so on, and AMP results, news, and so on, they're doing their level best to become HAL 9000. Yes, and though we're heading into space, and HAL 9000 is a computer that took them to space, and you have to wonder, for HAL 9000, it didn't turn out so well. So when we use that analogy, I have to wonder about it. I don't know. I think that the mobile user experience is incredibly important, and I think that they have focused on that very, very diligently and have produced a good search engine. And it's interesting to see how the search engines compare side by side when you look at Bing and you look at DuckDuckGo in the same user interface. My favorite, and the one that I like, is back to the original simplistic thing. I'm a big fan of DuckDuckGo, and the way that they present their results is just straight search results. They're not messing with them by adding knowledge panels and carousels and so on. They're just giving you the straight results. So that's what I favor. But I may not be the best ambassador for all search users because I'm in the business. So that's sort of a personal thing. But I think that if they create the voice search interface for mobile and so on, and they create the HAL 9000, if they can avoid locking the doors on Dave in space, I think that would be great.
Thank you. Next question, and we go back to technical SEO because technical SEO also includes the use of technical tools to measure and understand SEO performance. One of these tools are server log data, and we saw John Mueller tweeting about that a few things, and it looks like it's an interesting space for technical SEO. What to you is one of the most useful things an SEO can learn from log file analysis?
Well, this is another fun topic that harkens days of old when we analyzed logs in the old days and we no longer do. I was very impressed, and I'll say this flat out, that I'm interested in and impressed that OnCrawl is doing you're munging the data between log files and analytics together, because log files show you more information. When we have these ad blockers that can block scripts, there's a lot of traffic out there, and that amount of traffic is growing, where there's fewer and fewer hits in analytics where you see everything. And the unfortunate thing, and I complained about this on Twitter with an ex-Googler, why did you guys go dark except for analytics? Going dark meaning they no longer give us the keyword in the referring URL string. Yeah. One of the reasons why I like DuckDuckGo is they still do that. But so with log file analysis, right, in the old days, we used to have these packages with a www stats, right, which would give us the charts and stuff. We could see the traffic, and now everybody's been sort of, pushed by Google into using their product offering. I think log file analysis gives you a far greater amount of information if you know how to use the tools to mine them. Now, whether you're going to be using them in a business intelligence tool like OnCrawl, or you're going to be on the terminal itself using grep utilities to search through your logs to find things, that's kind of it depends on your level of ability as an SEO. But I love taking gzip log files and zcat right into a file and then go grep that file on a terminal, right? So, that's log file analysis like days of yesteryear, and it's still totally relevant. It's just like the abstracting away from being down on the metal with your server, abstracting away into these applications that sit on top, the website itself, and then of course Google Analytics that you add scripts to, so that they're doing their tracking. is gotten people's skill rusty in these old ways that I think incredibly useful, even more so now, because with the advent of privacy and security concerns, people are using ad blockers, and now you're going to see more of your traffic mining the logs. You're going to have a better view of your traffic mining the logs than you are just looking at analytics. Analytics does a good job, though. Of course, I'm not. I'm a user.
Thank you. And today we've discussed the technical profile of website, machine learning, and server logs. And is there one of these things that you think is on its way to becoming one of the essential things an SEO should understand? If you are prioritizing those stuff, what should be your top priority?
Well, the technical SEO is largely going to be somewhat familiar with things that are the basic technical SEO standards that have been around for a dozen years or more. So make sure you've got your basics covered. But moving forward, learn what you can, in especially try to learn to understand the JavaScript language, because the modern frameworks are written largely in JavaScript. And future web standards, even with something like web components, you'll be understanding things by exploring that language. If programming is not for you at all, then you might want to keep your technical SEO to the basic level. But for someone enterprising and moving forward, the more you become a developer yourself, the better off you will be. And the key and most important aspect to it for me, in my opinion, is going to be that you should understand how React, Vue, and Angular does its thing, and understand how to advise people to do server-side rendering, whether it's using universal on Angular or it's HTML to string on React and so on, and begin talking the talk to get developers who work in those frameworks through the process of indexing, and keep a sharp eye out on opportunities you get with the cache SEO, the so-called edge SEO, that is a burgeoning thing that can allow you to take care of some basic SEO things, even some advanced SEO things on the edge without having to involve the developers. But without having to involve the developers is always a dangerous thing. You want to make sure you're doing it in collaboration with them, that they understand you're there doing your thing. You don't want to confuse developers. You don't want to upset them.
Okay, thanks. Next, I have a series of very quick questions for you, Detlef, as we are running out of time. So, quick question, quick answer, okay?
Okay.
So, do you have a favorite technical trick?
A favorite technical SEO what?
Technical SEO trick, tips and tricks. What's your favorite trick? Yeah, or tip?
Technical SEO trick? Well, right now, I have to say I'm favoring this cache edge SEO kind of thing. Yeah. I really like having that in my arsenal.
Yeah. Totally get your point. Next question. Do you have a least favorite technical SEO question or myth that you want to trash?
The myth that you can't have more than one H1 on a page, which is something that in the early days I may have had a hand in propagating. But I want to close the book on that. You can. It's perfectly legal, and it may be, in fact, logical. But it's still optimizing just to have one. But this idea that you can only put one heading on a page and that it's disaster if you don't is erroneous.
Thanks. And do you have a favorite Googlebot?
The straight up Googlebot, even though it uses old Chrome. It's the most impressive one in my eyes. Being able to index all of the content across the web in such an efficient manner and serve up the Google search engine, that's a feat that hasn't been duplicated really, except, I also, of course, like Bing bot and DuckDuckGo as well. So.
Okay, thanks. And last quick question: do you have a favorite planet?
A favorite planet? Ah, that's a good question. Well, I can no longer say Pluto, can I?
No, you can't. You can't.
Yeah, I can't say Pluto, so I would say no. Saturn. Saturn is by far, with the rings. It's beautiful. We just had a flyby, and so we've got new pictures of it. So Saturn by far is one of the most beautiful planets in our solar system.
Okay, thanks a lot, Detlef, for that conversation. We've been very honored to have you attending this webinar. Do we have room, Emma, for questions? So
the honor is all
probably.
mine.
Thanks. Is there any question, Emma? Okay, I'll get them. Hold on a minute. I'm not having it on my screen, so I'm just asking Emma for a little help. Good question from Simon Cox. He's asking, is JavaScript the new Flash?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think Barry Adams is rather famous for saying that JavaScript is evil, which it's not. JavaScript is here to stay. Flash was really destroyed by the Apple, by Steve Jobs not allowing it on the iOS platform. And so he took a stand against it. I would have to say, no, it's not the new Flash. Flash has its own unique problems. And JavaScript is really doing a great many things, solving a great many products in a whole array of fields, not just SEO.
Yeah, just for the record, there's a comment by Dan Taylor. He's saying, "Awesome that you love Edge SEO." Yeah, we all. Thank you, Dan.
Yeah. Well, I have to. I hats off to Dan and all of those folks who really were on the cutting edge of this. Because I took a hiatus from SEO, and when I came back, I didn't see any innovation until I stumbled on that, and then I was just like, "Whoa, that is far out, man!" And I got way into it, and so I'm enjoying it very much. So I appreciate that. Good work, you guys.
Hello, Dan, by the way. Next question is, can we create AMP pages for product pages or product listing pages for e-commerce websites, as generally AMP are created for news articles and blogs? What's your point of view?
Yeah, I think you can, and successfully, if you want to do AMP, that is, because AMP comes with it inherent problems, beginning with the fact that you are storing your content on Google Cache. And originally, until just yesterday, you couldn't even get your own URL in the search results, so it looks like it's being served by Google, because it was being served by Google. But there's this new signed exchange package web standard that Google is just like running forward with, even though it's not really been approved yet. So they're trying to do this to force the issue, so that because they're so desperate to get AMP to not fail, right? So they're really doing all they can to get AMP useful for businesses, when in fact, you as a publisher have to make a decision. Is AMP something that adds value, or is AMP something that takes value away? With this signed exchange, you may never get a hit on your origin server at all, because the first click goes to load the page. Even though it looks like it's your address in there, you're still not getting that referral, because unless the user clicks again, they never visit your site at all. And I'm not in favor of just relinquishing control as a webmaster entirely of my own system over to a cache. if the cache is commercial like Google is, right? If it's, Cloudflare, they're offering me a service, that's a different thing. But if it's Google, it's a commercial enterprise, and you're just surrendering your content over to them in their cache. So news sites, they've had to struggle with this decision, and the jury's not out yet on whether this is a wise business decision or not. But yes, you can certainly serve e-commerce product pages.
Yeah, I'll just add something on that question. In my opinion, it's all about analyzing the visitor's journey. If your website, your accelerated mobile pages can answer a particular user intent, then you might implement them. But think about the situation when that guy is doing that particular query. If he's on mobile, if he's looking for information, maybe you can address them with AMP and then retarget them to get them to a particular product. So there are some corner cases where it's very useful to have a dedicated AMP strategy regarding the analysis of the user intent behind.
I agree completely.
Next question. Do you prefer to do SEO of an Angular website in comparison to static website Angular? I'm not sure to get that.
Well,
that right.
Yeah, although I would say that any SEO you do on a big site that requires a framework such as Angular or anything that's dynamic is something you're going to want to deploy advanced SEO techniques to, which means you're going to have to use logic to power your metadata and titles and so on. And so it becomes unwieldy if everything is totally static. So even in a static website, you're going to use some language to use includes of some kind, so you can do the work of an advanced SEO. When it comes to Angular or React, your SEO is driven by database and whatever algorithm you put on front over the database. Do I prefer one or the other? It's both great, man. I like it all. Whatever the job requires.
Last question, which is quite technical. Does multiplexing with HTTP2 make reducing the hash of requests less important?
Yeah. Well, cache solves the multiplexing issue. In a nutshell, multiplexing is a thing where how many hops does it take for you as a user of the internet to get to the server, which may be across the world, right? So multiplexing is there's all these nodes, all these places where there's switches around in the network, and you have to go through all those switches. So the whole concept of solving the multiplexing issue with cache servers, to have a cache server located near the user that has a copy of your site as it generally is, within a refresh cycle, so that they can serve it directly and skip all of the places in between. And so that is the idea behind caching, and that's the idea behind multiplexing. So HTTP2 is giving us more facility with solving the multiplexing issue, and so I'm all in favor of it, and I think that people should be moving to HTTP2 as they can.
Okay, thank you. This webinar is going to an end. Thank you, Detlef. It was great having you. SEO folks, don't forget to vote for Detlef's best tips from this webinar on Twitter, #OnCrawl. Thanks for traveling with us today through this corner of the technical SEO space. Swing by OnCrawl.com for your free trial, and join us for the next episode of SEO in Orbit on April 24th for driving better rankings through user experience with Chris Jaratana. Thanks a lot, Detlef. It was a real pleasure.
It was very much my pleasure as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.
Cheers.
See you guys. Ciao.